Autofocus. It is not as simple as you may think. Revise 2025 July. Why is autofocus not simple? There are modes, AFS and AFC, focus point areas, single, zone, dynamic, tracking, sounds perfect, maybe not, and the most common problem. AutoFocus modes. AFS is single shot, S for single. The camera will not fire unless the lens is in focus, used with single shot shutter mode. AFC is continuous, C for continuous. For sports and fast-moving action, the camera will fire even if the lens is not perfectly in focus, like when a subject is running towards you. Used with continuous burst shutter mode. AFC problem. A lens does not focus instantly. It takes a little bit of time to move the lens elements into focus. When I shot volleyball and quickly shift subjects, frame 1 is often out of focus, but frame 2 is in focus. The problem comes when the focus mechanism of the lens is not fast. It could take a few frames before the lens is in focus. I used a lens that often took till frame 4 or 5 to be in focus, so the first 4 frames were out of focus. So if you shot only 3 frames, all 3 frames would be out of focus. Solution. At school, I reconfigured the AFC on the Nikon D5600 to fire on focus, so it behaves just like AFS. The camera would not fire unless the lens was in focus. In practice, the short delay before the lens was in focus was not noticeable. Autofocus point or area. Single point. The camera will focus on the subject that you put the single autofocus point on. Zone area. The camera has specified zones or areas that it will focus in. The camera will focus on the subject in the zone. The size of the focus zone varies by camera, and a camera can have several options, as you will see in the next slide. Dynamic area, Nikon. It is somewhat like zone area, but you have to first put the autofocus point onto the subject. The camera will not search. This slide shows the difference between the Canon T7i and the Nikon D5600. There are 4 different focus options. Single point is the same. It's just one of the focus points. 3x3 is similar. It's a 3x3 matrix that the camera will use to focus. The difference is on the Canon, anything within that 3x3 matrix, the camera will determine what's the closest subject and focus on it. On the case of the Nikon, that little square on the girl's nose, that is the start of focusing. You as the user have to put that on the subject, and the camera will try and track that within that 3x3 matrix. Third item, 3x5 for the Canon and 5x5 for Nikon. Same thing for the Canon. Anything within that 3x5 matrix is what the camera will focus on. It'll focus on whatever is closest. And just like the D9, same thing with D21. You have to put that central focus point onto the subject first. And for all focus points are used for the Canon, and on the Nikon, all focus points are used, but the same thing, you still have to put the central focus point on the subject. Zone area problem. If there are multiple subjects in the focus area, like when shooting football and basketball, how does the camera decide on what to focus on? The camera does not know what to focus on. It does not have a real brain. For zone area focus, many cameras use the closest subject logic. The camera will focus on the closest subject in the focus area. Problem: if your subject is not the closest subject, the camera will not focus on your subject. These are examples of closest subject problem. Top right, the camera would focus on the blue basket on the table rather than the students that I'm trying to take a picture of. Middle left, the camera would focus on the back of white number 10 instead of white number 20 who is spiking the ball, because white number 10 is closer to the camera. Bottom right, the camera is going to focus on the opponent, blue number 6, rather than our runner, white number 87, because blue number 6 is closer to the camera. Autofocus recommendation. I recommend you use single point focus. For Nikon, use dynamic area D9. It is harder because you will have to track the subject and you will have to hold the AF point on the subject. If the AF point is not on the subject will not be in focus. But in exchange, you can choose what to focus on and not have the camera choose the wrong subject. Other autofocus. Face detect. Pros and cons. Pros: can be used to focus on the face on the other side of the volleyball or other net. Limitation: it is fine for shooting a single subject with no one else in the frame. Con: if there are several faces in the picture at different distances from the camera, 1. Which face does the camera detect? And 2. Which one face will it focus on? This depends on the camera. If the camera uses the entire frame for face detect, it will detect all the faces in the frame. Example on the next slide. If the camera can use a focus zone for face detect, you might be able to ignore some of the other faces. It's an example of face detect problem. My camera detects all the faces in the frame. So look at this picture. We have volleyball. We have faces on the front row, the back row, and we have 2 guys by the wall of the gym at the far end of the court. So there are 3 different distances involved. Which one will the camera focus on? Have no idea. Tracking. What is tracking? That is where the camera will track your subject and maintain focus on your subject. The issue: the idea works fine for a single subject, but may fail with multiple subjects. What is multiple subjects? Sports like football and basketball, where you have many people on the court or the field. You have several people in the frame, often crossing in front of your subject. And this is the thing about sports. Half of the players in the game are wearing the same color uniform. So how does the camera keep track of your subject? Tracking problem. Not all cameras implement tracking well. Some implementations of tracking is good, but some are very poor. Tracking implementation will vary by specific model within a brand. The tracking in a $500 non-pro camera will not be advanced as in a $5,000 pro camera. So you cannot blanket say brand X has the best tracking of all the brands. It may have the best tracking for their $5,000 pro camera, but not for their $500 non-pro camera. A common autofocus problem. As you use the camera, the autofocus point will move. You or someone before you will accidentally move the control, which moves the location of the active AF sensor. And if you look at the back of your camera and look at where the autofocus control is, you'll see that it is under your thumb or under the pad of your thumb. Very easy to move. So you have to, one, know how to recognize the active AF sensor. So you can see when it's gone off to the side. Then second, you have to know how to move the active AF sensor back to where you want it. The end. Please like and subscribe.